Yo, what's up, YouTube, man? My name is Phil Ford. I'm a current PhD student. I'm a dad. I have three beautiful children, and I started this channel because my passion is helping men, helping boys go from burnout and dysregulated to regulated using fitness and helping to heal the nervous system and things of that nature. I am someone who is I'm a Christian. I want to say I don't call myself, but I'm a Christian. Not only am I a Christian, I'm also bipolar. I was diagnosed bipolar about 2 years ago. I've struggled with depression, anxiety, most of my life, and today I want to just share my story. I spent a lot of time in prayer and just thinking about like when it was the right time to try to start sharing my story, mainly because I was still wrestling with a few things and still pretty new in my sobriety journey, and I didn't want to be leading people astray. But today I felt a strong burden to just share my story, and I felt like God was kind of leading me, and He has been leading me to share my story, so that my journey can be, so that you can come along the journey with me. And so that's what I'm just trying to do here. I'm just trying to be obedient. And a lot of things, I'm not going to be able to go into full details about everything, but I definitely want to share my about who I am, right? And why and how I got to the place that I am in. So if you're not already, make sure you just like, follow, and share. And let's jump right into it. So yeah, I grew up in inner city Washington D.C. I'm a native Washingtonian. Chocolate City back when it was probably at the peak of violence. I grew up in the war on drugs era. My father was a product of the crack epidemic, so I grew up with a father who was a functional addict. My parents would argue just about every single day. I don't remember any days when they really wouldn't argue, honestly. And so that kind of just left a scar on me that I really didn't process until I got older. Not only that, like my mom was not really, she wasn't really affectionate. So I also have some mother wounds that I didn't really have time or the place to really speak into or understand it up until maybe a few years ago. And so like my mom, like I can remember a couple of hands where my mom hugged or kissed me. Same thing with my grandmother. I don't really recall her hugging or kissing me. And that's my mom's mom. And so there's a lot of just there's a long list of just like hurt, pain, trauma, brokenness. Not only that, this is something that a lot of men don't necessarily open up to or acknowledge, is that I am a product of sexual abuse from both older boys and older girls. A lot of my childhood was filled with various types of like molestation of some sort, exploration. It grew into like exploration, and then with other kids in the neighborhood, showing private parts and doing things of that nature, and a lot of just what I would just call perversion. I never had a real healthy understanding of sex, right? I've never had a real clear understanding of intimacy, none of those things. And all these things are going to make sense, right? And so before I go any deeper, like I want to read this verse. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 1 through 4. The reason I want to read it is because I spent a lot of time being afraid to kind of like share this story or making up reasons why this wasn't the right time. And so I want to read this so that you kind of know where I'm coming from. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 1 through 4, it says this: When you go to war against your enemies and see horses, chariots, and an army larger than yours, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you're about to engage in battle, the priest is to come forward and address the army. He is to say to them, "Listen, Israel, today you are about to engage in battle with your enemies. Do not be cowardly. Do not be afraid, alarmed or terrified because of them. For Yahweh your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against you, to give you victory. I'm sorry. And I spent a lot of time afraid of that because my story deals with a lot of both alcoholism, alcohol abuse, and sexual addiction. And both of those addictions, they have, in public eye, they look very different. Like, so the alcoholic gets and receives a lot of grades. The sex addict doesn't get the same grades. And I'll go into a little bit more where I came to that conclusion from. But yeah, so that was my childhood. Lost my virginity when I was about 12 years old to an older girl. That was, first it was like a badge of honor, but thinking back to it, it was actually sexual abuse or statutory rape, or SA. I don't know how to work these things, but it wasn't proper. She was much older. I was 12 years old. I remember so many different instances where I was put in uncomfortable positions as a child with other girls. Some my age, some were not, but I just never had an actual childhood that was not hypersexualized. And as I grew up, I just became hypersexual. I played for a go-go band, and it just got worse. Like, I just did my own thing. I was with women after woman, girl after girl. I drank every weekend, and by the time I was 16 years old, I was basically drinking just about every single day. So let me just go through some things really quickly to give you just a timeline as to how I got to where I am today, and basically doing the work that I'm doing today. Because I'm still on this journey. I'm over 100 days sober, and I am super grateful for that. But I also want to just take this time to continue to share my story so that, one, I can be held accountable, but two, if there are other men who are going through similar things, that they can kind of see and come along this journey with me. Like, I focus on a lot of somatic approaches. I am going hardcore, shifting my diet to more of a primal diet and lifestyle in general, whole foods, less processed sugar and foods, more time outside, taking care of my body, my temple holistically as a whole. And so I want to share all these things with you because these are some of the ways that I try to help other men do the same thing. So you see why. So around 2010, my daughter was born. My oldest daughter was born. And that was probably like the craziest time of my life. Like, I had just, all I had done up until that point was sold drugs, basically. Like, I had never had an actual job or anything of that nature. And so getting ready to have this child, I was like, man, I don't have a job. Like, I don't know what to do with myself at this point. And a few months earlier, like, I had almost died twice. Like, I was in a car accident. Basically, we were on the highway in the middle lane, and the car tires were balded, so the car just spun out of control, hit the median. Thankfully, we got out of that situation. And then another time, I found myself looking down the barrel of a gun, right? And in that time, that was when God kind of like called me. He was just like, yo, you can either keep living your life the way that you're doing, or you can come serve me. The problem is that I had that Paul moment, like I was like on fire, I was eager, but I still wrestled with addiction. I still wrestled with alcoholism, and sexual addiction. I still wrestled with these things. And, I think there's a lot of people who will make you believe that, once you come to Christ, these things will just go away. And the reality for me is that those things didn't go away. They stayed. They lingered. I didn't know what to do with them. So yeah, I was having my daughter around 2010, but I was also suicidal. I was battling depression, anxiety, different things of that nature because, again, my dad had went to rehab when I was about 12. He left, for good causes. He left, but those were some really pivotal years. 12 years old is when I actually went and just started running the streets, getting into more trouble, things of that nature. So getting ready to have a daughter was just kind of like an eye-opening moment. At this point, I just felt absolutely nothing. I was completely numb to life in the world. So when I had my daughter, it actually gave me a sense of hope, right? I had a little glimpse of light. She was the only little bit of light that I had in my life. Everything else around me in my life was dark up until that point. And so she was really pivotal in my transformation and even moving forward. But it was still a slow journey. Like I still was the same person, right? I still battle with alcoholism. I still battle with addiction and all these other things, depression and everything. But instead of like me drinking every single day, I became like a binge drinker. Like I had binges. So what that means is like I could go months and everything be okay, and then for a week or 2 weeks or a couple months, like I'm just like in the gutter going hardcore in my addiction. So yeah, around 2017, my mental health began to kind of like break down like even more though. So 2017, like I did have another like binge cycle, but this one was kind of like worse. You know, like as I look back, I had moments where I can kind of point back to actually having like manic episodes. 2017 was one of those years. That summer, I was going out partying, drinking every single weekend, spending like $300 to $600 a weekend. Literally, like just buying bottles, getting tables. It was just a really crazy time. And by the end of that summer, I ended up in Dominican Republic, and it was the same thing. Like and I actually just ended up in like so much debt that particular summer. And by the end of that summer, it was like I got to December 31st, 2017, coming into the new year. And I ended up going out again, and lo and behold, I went out, I drank both Hennessy and Patron, and smoked some weed, and long story short, I ended up in a holding cell with a DUI, reckless driving, like 4 different charges, like fleeing police, a bunch of other things. It was just a crazy night. One that I don't even remember. That's one of the bad parts about it. Like I don't even remember anything except for coming to, and like the 5, maybe 10 minutes I was there at the actual club, right? So that's 2017. Things are getting worse. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. So I kind of went back into like this calm phase for a few years. Everything was just like going up and down. I was like having good energy, good spurts, starting stuff, being on the grind, and then going back down to deep depression. So fast forward, fast forward a couple years. I then get married. I got married, I think about 2020 it's about 2020. So I met my ex-wife, and I'll get there, but I met her at the end of 2018, about the end of 2018. And it was, like I knew that I still had these issues going on, but I just honestly, at this point, I thought that I could just keep praying them away. And another big important thing about this is that I came up in like a really strong reformed spaces, and so I took scripture really literal, and so like I believe like the verse, I think it's in like First Peter that says like all things that are found in life and godliness that pertain to life and godliness and found in the knowledge of Jesus. And so like I'm like, okay, well I just need to learn more about God, learn more about Jesus, and this addiction, all this stuff will go away. Completely wrong. I bought books, like I studied. Like I got really, like I know the word. I studied church history. Like I got into it in so many different levels. But it didn't do anything. It just gave me a bunch of head knowledge. So yeah, I ended up meeting my wife, and I was on good for a little while. And like literally, I was on good for a good little while, like while we were dating and whatnot. And before we even got married, like I had another episode, and I was not faithful. I cheated, and this is even before like we had gotten married. I never said anything. Like I was just super afraid. I was filled with shame. I did not know how to process it. And again, like I'm just sharing. I'm not making any excuses for anything. But this is just the reality of my story. I just want to be 100% honest and just move forward, right, with where I'm at now. And so, we got married. My second daughter was born in about 2022. Same thing. Like I was going through cycles, up and down. Even at the point like where my ex-wife, like when we look back and we reflect, and when we found out that I was bipolar, she would always, before we found out I was bipolar, but she would always say like she just felt like she was stuck in my cycles. Like I would just go hardcore and then just completely collapse down. And so that was like our entire marriage. Like the last couple years, what happened was I was just having like crazy cycles of mania. Like around 2023, I was like starting businesses. I had wrote like 2 or 3 books. I started a garden in like in middle of like December or something like that, or November. I started a garden, and I think it was December. I started a garden, and I was just completely out of whack. Like I got us into like some crazy debt, maybe like $30,000-$40,000 of debt. I bought a car. Everything just was like moving like super fast, and I didn't really understand what was going on. This was like the bipolar. I was manic, different things of that nature, and so these things just kept happening. Shortly after, a couple years later, we had another child. So this is kid number 3, and all of these same things are still happening. But later in that year, around 2023, like I said, like the cycles were happening, everything was happening. But the difference is that I was sober for a while. Well, sober in context, like I didn't have sex outside of my marriage for like the first 2 years or so. I was white knuckling in it, but I still had issues like pornography. Like I would just have weeks, and so part of my triggers was like loneliness. So I caught the COVID once, and this is in the peak of COVID. I caught the COVID, and we had to sleep in separate rooms. And throughout that whole week, I was literally like just watching pornography, masturbating, because like loneliness was a trigger. And the times that I did not be faithful to my wife were times when she were out of town, when we weren't together. But then there were other times like I would go out, I would drink, come back home drunk. She wouldn't know it, because again, like alcoholism, like I was an addict, and so I was just living that life, living a double life. I was also preaching, teaching, I was serving youth. Like I was doing what I was supposed to do, allegedly, taking care of family, all kinds of stuff. But I was like just a whole different person than who I was supposed to be. Like I was not all the way there. And so yeah, the cycles kept going. 2023, 2024 is when the curtain started to close. I went to therapy January 2024. That's when I was first diagnosed with PTSD, major depression, and unspecified anxiety. So I started my journey with therapy, things of that nature. Things weren't getting better. I mean, they seemed like they were getting better. But by this time, like I had already had 3 major incidences where I was not faithful to my ex-wife. And it's when I was like, we'll go to school. Like I was in a doctoral program, and we had to go away for a week, basically. And the first few years, like I was rooming with somebody. The last couple residencies, that changed. I didn't know it changed, and I just kind of like lost control. And so yeah, again, like hid some of these things from her. Hid all these things from her. And I remember she was saying like, God told her that I did these things, and of course I lied. I wanted to tell her the truth, but I just couldn't. So again, 2024, I'm going to therapy, things of that nature. And I think in January, at some point, I ordered like an HIV kit. I can't remember when, but it came sometime in like the summer, like 6 months or so later. Forgot I ordered it. And we get the junk, and it's like unmarked and all that stuff. I think it just had my name on it, but unmarked. And she opens it, and like it's HIV kit, and she's like, I need answers. And so at that point, this is like maybe June or something like that, like I had no choice. I had to kind of come clean with some stuff. And it took a few days to kind of like get everything out, of course. And I do recommend anybody who's going through this to actually go and have professional help. Like if your pastors are good and they have a background and it's cool, but if not, don't go to your pastors, don't go to your friends. Like go actually seek a sex addiction counselor, or a therapist who is well versed in in discovery. Where you just basically share everything that's going on. Like they help through the process. It's much easier. We didn't have that. So yeah, all this to happen, everything was happening, like my wife got my best friend involved. We got some folks from the church involved. It was just a really hard time. And as things were going on, like my mental was just like completely, I was at like 10% at this point. I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like the line, everything. I couldn't handle any of it. And there was one night, I was coming to pick up. I thought it would be my wife, but I kind of got pulled up into like a whole confession session, is what I would call like an intervention moment. And like I was just being pressed, and my mental went from like 10% to like 0. I had like a full blown like psychological break. I could not move. I physically was in my head. I could hear myself. I could talk and everything of that nature, but I was unable to kind of like move. Psychiatrist, she kind of like shared some stuff of what it was, but I kind of forgot at this point. But that was the first time I ended up in the psych ward. Was maybe about June, July, or something like that. I think early June. Yeah, something like that, because August I went away. So yeah, I ended up in the psych ward, 7 days, and that's when the mood disorder was just, no, that's when first it was major depression back in January, and then it was shifted over to a mood disorder when I was in the psych ward, that, insomnia, and some other stuff. And it was like, okay, I still don't have a clue what's going on. My ex-wife was like really smart. Like she knew some stuff about me that I didn't even know. Like my attachment style. Like she knew that I had an avoidant attachment style. I learned that, found that out like later in therapy, oddly enough. And she even was the first person to say like I might be bipolar. Like she looked at all the signs and everything of that nature. She was like, yo, I think you're bipolar. And I was like, I don't know. We had hints and some ideas that my grandmother was at the time, but really that's about it. So yeah, took that, and I realized like, yo, I needed to get help. My family did, because my dad also, had to leave to go get rehab and things of that nature. So my parents kind of took action. They jumped into it. Found a spot in Tennessee to go to do rehab, which was like $30,000. My parents made a crazy sacrifice with that. And so I left about August, and during that time, like I was on antidepressants. I think that's kind of like what kicked off like another manic episode though. But I had like a full-on like manic episode. Like they weren't as subtle as used to, where I can kind of think back in moments, and you had to be super close to me to realize like I was doing something. Like I had my mom sometimes doing stuff for me. She would just be like, oh yeah, like yeah, you had me do all this stuff, and then I wouldn't hear anything about it again. And this particular one, like I was shaking, like I couldn't sit still. I was pacing at the psych ward that they took me to in Tennessee, like back and forth for hours, until the psychiatrist gave me something. They just put it in my tongue, and it dissolved, and it kind of like brought me down. And that's when they put me on like a olanzapine or something like that. And that's when the first time they actually realized like, oh, I'm having a manic episode, like I'm bipolar. And so yeah, that was like the whole journey towards that. So the reason why I went through like all of these different things is because, not because I'm trying to not because I'm sitting here trying to make excuses, because I'm not. I believe that two things. I believe that when you have mental illness, when it's like bipolar, whether it's addiction, whatever it may be, and you are unfaithful, you are doing these things, like it is sin, no matter how you want to look at it. However, I think that it is really good to understand the why behind these things. And the church did a terrible job. Like we got no help in the entire process. The church was completely absent. Our pastors did absolutely nothing for us. There was no pastoral counsel. There was no care. My wife got some care, and it was just like, yeah, it's okay to divorce. Go ahead, do what you got to do, basically. But there was no actual care, no follow-up. Like they just did a terrible job, and they're still doing a terrible job now. Like even though we're divorced, like my ex-wife, we're on good terms and things of that nature. And there were good reasons for us to like really get divorced and everything of that nature. So, and so yeah, I mean, we are still processing the whole scenario, because we're still like kind of like living in it in some ways. Like I left the church that we were at. She stayed, and it's no actual care, pastoral care. Like they did a terrible job and are still doing a terrible job. And that's just the truth of the matter. I'm not going to say the church's name or anything of that nature. And like I love the brothers there for sure, and this is not me down talking, but y'all got to do better. If y'all happen to see this and y'all like, oh dang, I love you, but you got to do better. So anyways, like I want to read this verse to make sure, like, because I want you to see, like, I'm not just trying to make excuses for anything, because like as I was processing stuff, like I was processing 30 plus years of trauma and sexual abuse and all kinds of stuff. And as I was sharing these things, like they were literally like, yo, are you just playing victim? You're just doing these things. And the reality is like my ex-wife was like, she had to like kind of like stick up for me on a lot of occasions. Like, yo, this guy literally has gone through hell and back, and y'all aren't actually helping, but you want to be in a community that he grew up in. Like, why are you in inner city DC and you can't even deal with this one guy, right? You know, because churches, I feel like church today just, you know, they're only good for people who kind of have normal people issues, right? But anyways, this verse in Exodus 34:6, it says this: Yahweh passed in front of him and proclaimed, Yahweh is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in faithful love and truth, maintaining faithful love to 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity, rebellion, and sin. But he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. And so, like, we'll get into so much more of my story. That's just like a little taste of it, and we'll move forward. But I wanted to end with that verse because it is very clear that God is gracious. He is slow to anger. He is going to forgive you if you are a brother or man who's going through something similar right now. He is and already has forgiven you, but you have to get to a place where you deal with the mental. You have to deal with the inner battles before you can even stand before God sometimes. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way. Like, I had to deal with my depression. I had to deal with my bipolar. I had to deal with how sin affects my brain and everything of that nature before I can even begin to walk in repentance. Like, so forget what all the pastor's going to tell you. You just got to repent. You got to do better. You got to try hard. Most of them don't have a clue because they have not lived anything remotely close. So if you are going through it, take time to, one, lock into this channel because I'm trying to walk with you, but also take time to get your mental health together. That's the first step. Don't beat yourself up if you relapse, if you keep going back while you're trying to get your mental health side of things together, because once you get that part locked in, then everything else will follow. Then the spiritual, everything else will follow. Like, I get people be like, yeah, you got to go to God, run to God first. I hear you. There's a whole bunch of holy people who it worked out like that for them. There's a whole bunch of people, even addicts, who like, man, like, I prayed to God and I cried out to God and he took the taste out of my mouth. That might not be you. It was not me. But by God's grace, today, my mindset is changing. Like, I don't have the taste for it anymore. I don't have the taste for alcohol anymore. Like, I still have euphoric recall, but I don't want to just go out and have sex with a random person. Like, I want true, authentic intimacy. And I had to go through a whole lot to get to this place. I had to go to war with myself. I had to go to war with my surroundings. And that's why, one, I started with the verse I did. You're going to be going into war, and it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to press forward, and you're going to have to keep on moving, and you're going to have to keep trusting God. You're going to have to learn how to lament and cry out to God and be angry with God and be okay with the fact that you are angry with God. And I'm going to talk about that in a whole nother video, about being okay with being angry with God. But listen, that's the beginning phases of my story, this journey as I move forward. If this hits you, like hit home in any type of way, definitely subscribe, lock in, join the tribe. We're going to be digging in. We're going to be moving forward. And by God's grace, we're going to grow as men, as protectors, as providers, as priests of our homes, no matter what that looks like, no matter what our brokenness has caused, whether it's divorce, whether it's separation, whatever it may be. You still are called to be priest, protector, and provider. If you have children or whatever it may be, you are still called to those things. You still have purpose. You still have a mission that God has given you. And so I want us to walk in that. I want us to be warriors. I want us to live our lives according to God's grace, not the standards of men who are just as broken and who have no clue of how to actually help you. If this is something that you're like you need help with, make sure you just follow, subscribe, lock in with me, and let's move forward. Grace and peace.